Good morning, all. Thank you for being with us here today. I'm Mujib, a global shaper with the Abu Dhabi Hub and the IRENA Youth Delegate 2023. It's my pleasure to welcome you all to our session titled Decarbonizing the Planet, Youth's Contribution to the Energy Transition. The session will shed light on how youth are actioning decarbonization through innovative projects and solutions both in their work and volunteering. The pathways of decarbonizing the energy sector and its challenges will also be explored to identify the key barriers to accelerating the energy transition as seen by young leaders. I'm also excited to share that this is the first collaboration between IRENA and the Global Shapers community. The Global Shapers community is an initiative of the World Economic Forum that believes in a world in which young people are at the heart of solution building, policy making, and lasting change. The mission is to inspire, empower, and connect young leaders to reach their full potential, shape decision-making processes, and drive positive change in the communities and the world. With over 8,000 shapers in over 500 cities driving projects across various impact areas, including climate change, sustainability, and the energy transition, we believe that there is significant potential in collaborating with IRENA, given that IRENA has also been a champion when it comes to empowering and meaningfully engaging youth through various initiatives such as the Global Council on Enabling Youth Action for SDG 7, the IRENA Youth Delegate Program, the New Gen Renewable Energy Accelerator, and many such other initiatives. I would like to thank Ricardo and the IRENA team for supporting us in bringing this event to life. With that said, I would like to now invite Neha to proceed with the session. Thank you all.
All right. Okay, good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us. We're extremely excited for this panel today where we're going to talk about decarbonizing the planet and really the youth's meaningful engagement in this process of energy transition. Today, we're extremely excited to have shapers from around the world, and we're great to see a lot of representation from different continents, different areas, and different areas of focus in terms of what they do and what they're passionate about. So hoping to learn a lot from everyone. So we shall start with the amazing Valerie Salas. Do you want to join us? Valerie is a youth climate advocate from Peru. She is a global shaper from the Lima Hub. She's also part of the global coordinator team at Yango and founder of Chambea, which is the first youth-led platform for green jobs. And we'll definitely be talking to her more about that. Then I am extremely proud to have someone from the region, Sara Al-Harthi. Please join us. She's the executive manager of business development at Aqua Power, where she looks at renewable energy, sustainable utilities, and green hydrogen, among other things. She's also the lovely curator of the Jeddah Hub. She's also a Yale Climate Fellow and has also been selected as the future energy leader by the World Energy Council. So proud. Then, bringing her positive energy all the way from Beijing, we have Lucy Tong. She works at the newest multilateral development bank, the Asia Infrastructure Investment Bank, AIIB, where she also actually hosted a youth dialogue just a couple of days ago and did a great job at that. She works on the climate strategy there, and she also works on a lot of climate-related projects at her hub in Beijing. Extremely excited to have you. And last but not the least, our representative man on the panel here, Fogamomi Nick Moeno is currently pursuing, actually please join us first. All the way from the Apia Hub in Samoa, he is currently pursuing a PhD in engineering, focusing on small island renewable energy systems transition, specifically for Samoa. He has actually been selected as one of the 100 delegates for the International Youth Climate Delegate Program this year, and we're extremely, extremely proud of that. He has served as a renewable energy engineer for power utility in Samoa and has been an energy consultant in this space. So extremely proud to see people from all walks of life and industry and the world, and we're hoping to learn a lot more from them. I don't know why they left this space between us. Guys, I don't smell. All right, for now. All right. So maybe I'll actually start with Lucy. So we wanted to talk a little bit about just sort of setting the stage, right? What is decarbonization? Why is this important for sustainable development? What are the key industries? Who are the key players that we need to look out for within the space?
Okay. Hello, hello. Yes, I can hear myself. Thank you guys. First of all, thank you guys for joining us. I mean, it's the 10th and then it's very early in the morning. I can't believe that there was a line entering the stage today. So thank you for joining us. And I, by no means, is an expert in decarbonization. And so I'm here to share a bit about my understanding and also to learn from everyone else. And so, to me, decarbonization, I think in between all that, I think there's been a few topics or a few key words that grabs everyone's attention when at this COP. And one is the keeping 1.5 degree alive, and then we also have the global stocktake. And so to bring it back, and I bring it back to my students when I teach them what is climate change, is decarbonization is to keep 1.5 degree alive by kind of focusing on each country's global stocktake. And what do I mean by that is if you look at the Industrial Revolution and how we got to realize that climate change is a problem, is because countries started developing and then they started emitting carbon dioxide, and that was not good. And then we quickly realized that we can't really survive under these kind of conditions. And then we started talking about, what's the temperature goal that we should set, or how do we keep humans alive? And the pathway to, or the golden key to do that, one hand is mitigation, which is the decarbonization aspect of things, and then the other is the adaptation, which by the way, they go hand in hand, and so you need to, you can't have mitigation without adaptation. And so what are the key players to look out for? Simple, IRENA. And so, yeah.
Thank you for setting the stage. And maybe let's go a little bit deeper, and I'll bring this to Sarah. So a big part of the decarbonization conversation tends to be around energy, right? But there's also a lot of back and forth about, is renewable energy the answer? But there's storage problems, but there's the duck curve, and et cetera, et cetera. So just help us, unpack that a little bit. Why is renewable energy so key? And if you could actually talk about some specific examples from MENA, that would be great.
Yes, thank you so much, Nihan, for the Global Shapers from UAE for organizing this along with IRENA. So first, renewable energy today in the conversation becomes the most famous contender is because it's less carbon intensive than fossil fuels, and it is more sustainable. So when we look at renewable energy, it could be deployed both in the power sector and the transport sector and in the heating of systems, which is the basic necessities of life. And renewable energy is the key enabler for us to reach 1.5. To answer the question why renewable energy, for two reasons. First, the growth that it has witnessed in the last 20 years, and specifically in the past 5 years. Renewable energy doubled actually in the last 5 years. And the price of renewable energy have been reduced significantly. If you look historically since 2009, PV, for instance, it was reduced by 90%, and wind was reduced by around 74%. So that cost reduction have really allowed us to look at a case where renewable energy is most competitive than fossil fuels. When I started working in renewable energy industry 5 years ago, we were still talking that PV is still higher than fossil fuel-based systems, and wind substantially higher. Today, as we stand in 2023, it's substantially less than fossil fuel system. So then it's a moral question, why should we continue deploying fossil fuel-based systems if the alternative is there? In December 2nd, in this COP28, we saw the pledge of tripling renewable energy, which is something that IRENA, IEA have been advocating for in their insights. And seeing countries pledge to that, is quite progressive, and it's the right approach. When we talk about energy transition, we talk about energy trilemma, which is security, affordability, and sustainability. But most importantly is the quadrilemma of energy transition, adding the fourth element, which is speed. So if we're able to triple energy, renewable energy by 2030, at the speed that is required, we can hope to see that 1.5 is still alive. Answering your question on the region, as you've seen in MENA and around us in Europe, 2022 and 2023 has been a difficult year geopolitically. We've seen a lot of wars and unrest, and this is definitely quite linked to energy sector in general and the volatility of prices and all of that. So all of this unrest poses a question of the importance of energy supply and energy security. And as well, it raises the importance of having regional outlook and regional understanding and solution within the regions. I'll just give an example of Saudi Arabia and how within Saudi Arabia and within the GCC, we're trying to champion energy transition. So in Saudi Arabia, the country committed that by 2030, we would have 50% of our energy mix from renewable energy, accounting for 58.7 gigawatt. And we're already starting deploying these projects, and I'm happy to be part of, the private sector that is working on that. Aqua Power, where I work, we are interested in 70% of that 58 gigawatt, which puts a lot of pressure to be able to deliver at the speed that is required. And what's important in this region, and Saudi in specific, is that what we've been able to do is to drive the price of solar energy so low that is unparalleled anywhere else in the world. Last year, when we announced Shuaiba project, it was 1.04 cents per kilowatt hour. And what does that provide? It provides possibility of an energy access here in this region and everywhere in the world. It's possible to deliver at a cheap price. There is definitely other question, as we triple our energy system, what happens to the waste of these panels or these wind turbines after the end of their life cycle? What happens in terms of critical mineral that is required in the 7 years as we go to 2030 tripling energy? Do we have enough of these critical minerals to build these energy systems? And as well, the consumer mindset. Are we going to continue to just build projects for 15 years, 20 years, or are we going to try to think of how do we expand the life of these projects beyond their life cycle of 25 years? How can we build our system that is longer, that serves better, and it allows for secure supply?
Thank you. And I think the theme that I'm getting out of there is there are challenges, but there's also a lot of hope, right? And there's a lot of, we're moving the right direction. Keeping with challenges and hope, I'm going to bring Nick in. I want to bring it back to the COP process. So challenges and hope right there. So where has the COP process really benefited the energy transition, and where perhaps it could do some more?
Yeah, testing. Thank you for the question. And I think just to really start off is like the energy transition isn't new. We've always been transitioning either from technologies to fuels to testing. Oh, well, that's a lot louder. Yeah. So yeah, the energy transition isn't new. We've always been transitioning either technologies or fuels and so forth. And I guess in particular is to really grasp it. There is no silver bullet for any one solution for the energy transition. Each country or each region has their own particular solution, considering national circumstances, national priorities, national needs, and something that is fit for purpose. And I think that's really key. I guess to kind of answer your question, there are three parts to this. The first is the energy transition should not only just focus on technology and infrastructure, but also look at how economies evolve, transform, how people and communities, where do they all fit into this energy transition? Essentially, if people are not at the heart of the transition, bottom up, then the speed and scale of where we need to be is not going to happen. The transition is not going to be effective if we don't actually consider our communities all around the world, and there's going to be a lot of challenges that will occur down the line. So it needs to be community driven, it needs to be community accepted, and it needs to be community owned. I think that is a lot of the challenges in the COP process, especially at the international level, is like we're not really talking about this. The second part is that the energy transition, I think, should really improve upon where does the environment or the natural environment fit into all of this. In Samoa, particularly in the islands, we're not really familiar. A lot of people don't actually know what carbon capture is, but our version of carbon capture is forest and oceans and mangroves. So we really want to put our time and effort into all of that. The energy transition in our communities that I've talked to, they don't really understand what that means. They're not concerned about what's happening in the long run. They're really wanting to know, am I going to get light? Am I going to get power? Am I going to get food? And all of those things in Samoa and in the Pacific really comes down to farming and our agriculture. And so essentially, when we think about the energy transition, we're transforming the way we live, we're transforming the way we generate power, our economies, our food systems, our energy systems, and hopefully not really sacrificing our food security, because at the end of the day, if people don't get food and power, the basic necessities of life, then I think we failed as people and as leaders. The third is energy security and energy resilience. And so with the energy transition, I guess one thing that could be improved upon in the COP process is what happens when there is a cyclone and it wipes out certain components or certain infrastructure in the Pacific. And so for Samoa, back in 2012, we had Cyclone Evan that wiped out 3 hydro stations. Now that actually set us back quite a number of years in terms of economic development, in terms of where we need to be to achieve our energy targets and goals. But where that fits into the COP process, I've got no idea. And I think that needs to be brought to light. There needs to be, then again, like what I mentioned before, the energy transition needs to consider national circumstances, national priorities, and particular needs. The energy transition for each region needs to be fit for purpose, especially for our most vulnerable communities and our vulnerable islands. And where do youth come into play into all of this is really just to bring our experience, share that with our negotiators, with everyone here, exactly what we're all doing, and really try and touch the hearts of everyone. And there's a saying that that goes around in the Pacific is, stories move the hearts, but science moves the money. Thank you.
Love that, love that. Put it on a t-shirt, someone, please. I will buy it. I'll be your first customer. Bringing to Valerie, so Nick really touched upon this idea that it needs to be a whole system approach, right? Everything is involved, and especially as energy transition, a lot more investment comes into the energy transition. It trickles down into the economy, into jobs. So if you could touch on a little bit about, the role of green jobs in this transition, and what do we need to do to be ready for it?
Thank you so much for the invitation. Thanks for also incorporating these society issues and people issues in the energy transition. For those who don't know, that's actually the just transition, what we're talking about, like all the changes that we also need to put in place so we actually deliver the energy transition and we keep that 1.5 alive. In the case of green jobs, I think that there is a lot to say about them. The first thing is that they have been around us for a long time, even before we start talking about the Paris Agreement. The issue is that right now we are spotting them and they were highlighting them because they're the base in order to actually deliver the energy transition. In what sense? In the sense of we need engineers, we need technicians, we need all this knowledge to actually implement it in the field, in the local level. And in that sense, we want to promote green jobs as a way to actually deliver all the gigawatts and deliver like all the energy we need and so on. But also, when we talk about green jobs, we also are talking about how we're going to transition, because we also right now have these brown or maybe fossil-dependent jobs that need to transition to this new economy, because otherwise they will lose their jobs, we will have a crisis, people won't have the development we all have the right to have, and then what are we going to do? So I think that that's also one part of the green jobs approach, that actually how we're going to help these people from oil and fossil fuel sectors to transition to these green jobs in the decarbonization economy. And then you start thinking more about, like, for example, students from different perspectives, from universities, but also secondary students or like technician students. Like how, for example, in my country, we have petroleum engineering. And if we are thinking that in the next 30 years we're going to phase out fossil fuels, like what is this person going to do? So we also need to start greening education in order to help the young people now to adapt in the next 10, 20, and 30 years, so they have actually the skills, the knowledge, but also the soft skills to actually be, well, not valid, but also updated in the current and the future labor markets. And then you also start thinking about also the cities and their role in these green jobs. So during all this COP, I had the opportunity to also partner up with C40. And we talk a lot about with the mayors, and they were saying, I don't have like a policy on green jobs. But I have realized that when I actually have these measures on adaptation and mitigation, I am creating green jobs. And that's amazing. So green jobs are needed for the transition, but then when you're actually implementing them, the measures for just transition, you're also creating green jobs. So they become, you need it before, but also after. And that's amazing, because that means that we can actually deliver a better system for everybody with human rights base, but also like dignity, and also a sustainable income and rights for people to actually have a better life, a better job, but also like help the planet. And what needs to be in place for all this? I think that I have mentioned it slightly. We of course need education. We also need the willing to change. We also need research, because for example, in Latin America, we don't know which green jobs are there available and what are the pathways to actually have a green job. So for example, right now I'm an industrial engineer and I'm a sustainability consultant, but I basically made my way in order to be a sustainability consultant. I invest my money to know more about greenhouse gases. I invest my money in order to know what negotiations are, but that's not the privilege everybody has. So how are we going to actually close that gap in knowledge, close that gap in how people can actually get a job, and what are the skills needed for that? And I think that finally we also need investment, but also cooperation, because in order to actually deliver all these changes and in order to actually build the supply and demand in these green skills and this just transition, we also need to sit down with the key stakeholders, which are public sector, of course, because we need policies in order for this to develop. We need the private sector, because there's where the demand of these green jobs will be. But we also need the academia and the youth involved, because the academia is going to actually support with these building capacities, and the youth are going to be the beneficiaries of this. So all these stakeholders, cooperation and investment need to sit down and start building ecosystems for green jobs development. So I think those are the things we need in place. But I also think that a new perspective and a new mindset is needed. So in Latin America, the International Development Bank says that there's a potential to actually create we will have a positive increase of green jobs after all this transition. But what not everybody knows is that this is like a sum, because we will lose some jobs because people need to transition, and then we will gain more. So when we're talking about this positive increase in green jobs, we also need to start thinking about the people that are there, the families that will depend on this economy, but also of how these will, as a society, help us to be in another point of our life where hopefully we can all achieve a sustainable development.
Thank you. Let's maybe bring the conversation more specifically to youth. And Sarah, I'll bring you in here based on the conversation we've just had around green jobs and green skills, as I know skills is something that you're very passionate about. So, I mean, the good thing about engaging youth is you can start early, right? You don't have the legacy issues of I spent 15 years in a different industry and now how do I switch? So what skills do youth really need to obtain, hard skills and soft skills, to be part of this energy transition in a more meaningful way?
So first of all, I'd like to start by saying that the kind of policies that we're seeing today in this energy transition is primarily policies that are coming from the global north, and we're trying to adopt in the global south. And sometimes I think that maybe this is a new form of green colonialism. Because if the technology is in the global north, and if the knowledge is in the global north, we will continue to be dependent on the global north to teach us, to aid us. But I believe that the green transition is an equalizer of a sort, because where is the critical minerals? It's in Africa, it's in China. Where is the production happening? It's in China. So we as the global south, we do have power, but we just need to recognize it and act on it. As we move from this molecule-based energy system to an electron-based energy system, there is a huge range of skills that needs to be developed. Primarily adaptability, because as we continue to move from energy source to another, we're still not aware of, we know that PV is in the highest demand, but how energy storage systems will look like. Today, lithium ion. Tomorrow, it's salt-based basin energy storage. So today's youth need to be adaptable and need to have primarily STEM skills and basic scientific and engineering skills to be able to understand and easily navigate between different type of systems as we go through these different energy systems. For sure, I think one of the jobs that's gonna be in high demand is carbon accounting, and everything that comes to measurements, auditing, because if we need to hold people accountable and countries accountable to their targets, we need to be able to have a workforce that is able to measure these commitments and that progress. And definitely, as we look at the trade system of energy systems, and if we want to really have a net zero target and triple the energy system, how does the trade will look like? If we're going to continue to ship solar panels through marine system that is fueled by fossil fuels, then we're really in trouble, because we're going to triple emissions from marine shipments and this system for us to reach net zero, which we don't want to do. So we need new set of young people who are willing to put on the hard work to work on emission standards in all parts of the economy, and training them to be flexible, agile, and adaptable. And in general, the more you have green skills, the more you have innovation, the more you have growth and equitable society. I think one of the things that I wish to see in this region is, on a national level and a regional level, green skill accelerators to take all the youth and upskill them, and the youth who are working in different industries to be reskilled, to be part of this new green economy.
It's amazing. And I think sometimes, we're at COP right now, and sometimes we're preaching to the choir, like everyone is willing to be part of this conversation. But maybe, Lucy, to you, to those that perhaps are on the fence about it, or they're like, this doesn't really affect me, this renewable energy thing, not interested, especially as youth, what would you say to them? Why or how are youth impacted by decarbonization? Why should they care?
Mm-hmm. Thank you. So you guys elaborated so much that I don't know what to share anymore. I guess I'll come from a personal perspective, and so the story is simple. So I come from China, and then I come from a province called Inner Mongolia, and this is a province. It's one of the biggest provinces that's on the up north, and right by Mongolia. And we're known for our horses. We're known for our grasslands, but we're also known for a city called Balto. So the city was created in the establishment of the country to have a iron and steel factory that is state-owned enterprise. And so 3 generations of my family worked in the iron and steel industry. And that was, a very promising job for my grandparents. And it made sense for them to raise a family in the region, and then that's how my parents grew up. But at the time when I was growing up, it didn't make sense for me to be studying what my dad did, because I'm probably not gonna stay in Inner Mongolia to find a job, or to find meaningful employment, and so. I guess that's what energy transition has led to the career choices of my family. And so now I work in climate change as opposed to what my parents does. and then I kind of want to bring it then to where I work right now, which is the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank. And I think when it comes to youth, we need to really, as the MDB who is investing in infrastructure, we need to recognize what are the impacts that we're doing on the local communities. Like you said, mitigation or the energy transition doesn't necessarily mean we're building solar panels in every part of the world and covering them up. But what it means is that the infrastructure will be there for more than a few decades. And we need either to present this as an opportunity for youth employment, and also understanding that this will shape their understanding of the world, because you're going to grow up, or at least my parents didn't grow up looking at solar panels and looking at digital screens throughout their life, and it's a different understanding of the world, and they need to be equipped to have the skills, and they need to be engaged in the decision making in order for it to make sense. And so a little advertisement here. We're going to have a discussion around what does it mean by meaningful youth engagement in infrastructure investments just right after this at 11:30, and food will be provided in the AIIB pavilion.
Nice plug there, Lucy, nice plug. Nick, maybe if I can bring you in. So we've talked about why is it important for youth to be involved, but I think I would love your take on how can the youth bring out the urgency around the situation, especially coming from more vulnerable states and island states, because perhaps elsewhere in the world, it's not as urgent, or it doesn't feel as urgent as an issue as it does for example, Samoa, right? So how can they meaningfully engage, especially in COP process, which tends to be very, maybe not as transparent as we would like it to be, or maybe it might just seem a little overwhelming for youth to get involved. So how can they get involved in this process, and how can they bring out the urgency around it?
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to echo your points. Like, there's already a lot said, so I'm going to try and improvise my answer now. Thank you, ladies. And I think the first thing that really came to my mind is going back on the principle. There's a Samoan principle where there's a connection between myself, my internal self, with other people, with the environment, and with the universe. And so bringing that principle into the COP process, and as kind of looking through a youth lens, and just touching on what everyone else have already said, is that youth can be connectors in the youth process, and connectors with really the communities back home, with the negotiators, with civil society organizations, and with other people through networking. And so one significant way that youth can take part in the COP process is get involved in the negotiations. That's one effective way. If it's your first COP, I don't expect you to kind of take the lead, but actually be there in the room and support, influence, kind of provide some alternative solutions if there's a gridlock. and really just touching on the point that I said before is like share your story. A lot of these negotiators that come into COP, you know, it's nice to have a youth perspective or youth angle to some of these gridlocks. And also, youth have a lot more energy, so when it comes towards the last few days of COP, you know, we're not as fatigued, and so we're able to continue that movement and push and drive. The second part is participate in civil society, and just remember that COP is only for 2 weeks, and you got 50 weeks of the year, and so really what is going to be the most effective way? So one way is through Youngo, and they have events throughout the year that's kind of built up, leading up to COP. I think you may have heard of the Global Youth Statement and the Energy Negotiation Tracker. And so those things have been developed over the year. And whether you come to COP or not, that's okay. At least your input is still there. Even when you're back at home, I know the Pacific Climate Warriors are here, and other organizations and civil society and other groups, you know, they're here on behalf of their community, and they're influencing top-down on the negotiations. And so that's really one way. The other way, Pacific Climate Warriors. Yeah.
What is it?
Oh, it's a climate activist movement, and so they really focus on really just a whole broad range of things that are not really discussed here at COP, and they really catalyze and accelerate certain things as well. And just going on to my final points, is networking. So young people can really influence the COP process through networking, meeting new people, sharing, again, stories, and bringing those networks back home to the communities. One thing that I've learned, this is my first COP, so one thing that I've learned here at COP is that in Samoa, you know, you're kind of closed off, geographically isolated, and so there's a bubble there. But coming to COP and meeting new people and kind of hearing about these new technologies and kind of talking to the experts, it kind of brings me hope that there is an alternative way that I can bring those solutions or methods back to the islands. And so really just going back on my point, like youth as connectors in the COP process, I think we're moving away from being just an engineer or just being an accountant, and quite early on, we're now kind of in this interdisciplinary stage for young people. And so that's it.
Amazing. And I'll ask one last question and open it up to Q&A to Val, and maybe sort of building off of what Nick was saying. So Youngo is definitely a organization that is extremely involved within this space. Maybe you could just walk us through your personal journey of like getting involved with Youngo, and you know how you ended up at the global coordinator team. What does that do? How does it engage? Just so we don't repeat the same thing.
It's okay, thank you so much. So yeah, Yanko is the official constituency of the UNFCCC for the last like more than 10 years. We have been actually recognized by the convention as a key stakeholder that needs to be involved in these negotiations, and also as an observer. We hopefully one day will be also part of the decision-making table, but right now we're an observers. So I started in Yango some years ago at COP24, yeah, I believe. But I actually knew about Yango when COP came to my city. So I'm from Lima, I'm in Peru, and we host COP20, and it was like, I think exactly like this COP, like when a COP goes to your city, it overtakes the city, because suddenly, like the newspapers that no way they talk about the climate crisis, they start talking, this is so important, and like climate education, and more trees for everybody. And that's what happened, and I was in the university, and I was a volunteer in the green zone of that COP20, and then I met some friends, and they told me, oh, there's like this young organization, and they gave me like this perspective of actually, it's your right to have your voice heard in these spaces. And that's a mind shifter for me, because like until that moment I was like, climate governance is for decision makers, and I just need to sit down, see that, and accept what it is. And I think that when they told me and they shift this mindset and told me you can actually be part of it, you can actually help shape those conversations, it's like, oh my God, like then why not why not more young people are involved in this space, and why not like take part of this space and actively help more people to be part of it. So I officially attended as youth delegate at COP24 in Katowice, because I also like, same as Nick, there was in those days this Global Youth South Scholarship that was funded by some Global North governments. And I had the opportunity to have this training, like it was small, it wasn't like 6 months like you, Nick. It was like super, super small. It was like the seed, I think, that actually like then developed this International Youth Climate Delegate Program, and then like this, we have also climate reality training in Latin America, but also the climate youth negotiation program right now. That's also another opportunity. You like youth right now have more opportunities than we had in that time. And then I started like advocating for actually more people to be involved, especially from my region, because I think that once again it's about the mindset. Like sometimes when you are from the global south, you think like, oh, we cannot do anything. Like we just sat here and we are not like the role we can play is very limited. But then like helping others shift that mindset so they can actually unblock the power of youth, like makes all the difference and makes them catalyzers. So for example, we as Yongo have the local conference of youth, because we understand not everybody can come to COP because there's financial limitation, there are like budget limitation and so on. So when we have like this local conference of youth, some of the directors of the local conference come to COP. And we have noticed, and we also support them financially when there's budget available. And we have noticed that once you fund one youth to COP, then when they go back to their countries, the impact they have in these capacity building programs, they basically train or impact more than 100 people back their countries. So every youth they're funding right now to come to COP, to be active, then when they come back, they impact more than 100 youth in their countries through capacity building, to activism, to different trainings they do on COP, but also on climate change and ACE, that's actual Action for Climate Empowerment. And that's amazing because you are like basically giving the opportunity to a catalyzer to actually become a catalyzer here, because they're exposed to all these, like what Nick was saying, like networking, like decision makers, and that's really nice, and that's why I have been with Django so many years. But also, you also need to know that Django, like, it's a space until 35, so in one point of life, I need to go, everybody needs to go. But I think that's also like a good thing, because Young is just the platform that trains you and gives you these opportunities. But then when you become an adult, then you can actually be a youth ally. And that has happened to us too, because we have had youth that were younger, that were really active, and now that are negotiators right now. So for example, they are now youth allies. So that's nice, because when we are in a negotiator table, we need youth allies in order to put some words to actually reference youth and children right now. So it's like a platform to actually empower more youth people in different aspects. So if you have the time, if you want to know more, please come and join us, and also become these youth allies if you are not young.
Okay, old people in the audience. All right, so with that, I think let's open it up for Q&A. Does anyone have any burning or not so burning questions for any of our panelists?
Excellent, thank you. So I loved what you mentioned as far as youth being able to connect people back to their basic humanity. I think also to a larger purpose, as well as you mentioned, in connecting to nature, to the universe as well too. And thinking about just the role of youth. One of the things I think might be kind of absent sometimes from these discussions is perhaps more direct action. You know, thinking about, for example, civil disobedience. I don't know if that's also part of the toolkit you have in mind as well too, or perhaps as well maybe there's a difference in terms of maybe global north activism, global south for as well too. But I guess just kind of turn it over to you. If the normal kind of processes and procedures, especially negotiations, are not working, what else do you think? What's the plan B?
Do you want to take it, Nick?
That's a really good question. So I will touch on what you mentioned before, just so I can think about your answer, your question. Like the different perspectives with the Global North and the Global South. And I guess for the Global South in the Pacific is that we're really asking for immediate action now. You know, things are happening now. You know, we're getting impacted by climate change. Our energy systems need to change. And we're not really too concerned about what the Global North perspective is. You know, they're asking for policy change, they're asking for having a seat at the table, and etc. I guess where the plan B comes in, and if negotiations don't come well, turn out to be effective, is to continue being in those climate or civil society spaces and keep adding the pressure, keep raising the awareness, and bring what's happening to light. Because I think if things stay in the dark, not everyone will know what's really happening. And so, especially in the negotiations, if there's blockage, if there's kind of certain groups that are preventing other countries from speaking or not getting a certain text in, that needs to be brought up to light so everyone can understand, like, this is what's happening, and maybe we can get some external support.
And maybe Val, you're giggling in this corner with this question, so is there something you want to add on this one?
Yeah, I was thinking that what's the plan B? And to be honest, like from my perspective, the most like civil disobedience we can do is actually to take action at our local level. So you government are going to do it? Okay, we're going to do it. How? I don't know. Like we just like doing this on a voluntary basis, like doing so much connections and like try to build community-based action to actually deliver the results we're expecting from governments. And what has happened, especially I was thinking in a case of a friend that's called Sofia. So in Peru, we actually have food security issues, energy security not, but food security issues. And the thing is that people, what they do is like they come in the community and each of them like give a little of the food they have and then they cook together. So that's like, in Spanish it's called ollas comunes. I don't know like how to translate it in English, but it's like common, let's say it's common kitchen, okay? So it's a communal kitchen where everybody collaborates. And the issue with this is that most of these kind of initiatives, you need like either gas or you need like carbon to actually fuel the kitchen. And she has a project that is basically with biofuels to actually, and solar panels to actually help this process be sustainable. And when she wanted to start this, she went to the local government and said, hey, I want to do this, we'll help your population, why don't you help me? And the local government said no. She went to the Ministry of Environment and said, hey, I want to do this, like, can you help me? And they said no. So she partnered up with the community, but also with the university that she was studying, and they started doing like a first MVP, and then the MVP grow, and then like right now they are like in 2, 3 local level districts. And then she just won like the MIT Soft Prize last year. And it's like now with that platform, she's coming back to Peru and it's like, oh my God, we want to partner with you. So it's like sometimes that for me especially is like that rebel like soul or like that rebel inspiration is actually doing things. And that has worked like in this case. I don't know how it works in other cases because sometimes the story is not so nice. The story is like you do a lot and then like sometimes you don't have the support and then you just are discouraged and then you cannot make change. But like I think that from my experience, like that's the disciplines we do. And also I think that there are a lot of ways to actually do the plan B. And it's up to you on how to actually start developing that plan B when things don't go the way you like or the way we need in actually to deliver the just transition. So I think that it depends on what you do, where are you living, and what are like the options you have. But as long as you have that plan B and that you are actually able to express yourself and also do what you want, it's okay.
I have a few things to add on, but first, I disagree with your statement. It shouldn't be a plan B. It should be a all hands on deck kind of thing. And we've seen that with COP. Everybody is here. Everybody is in COP28. And so we understand that all stakeholders are engaged. The academics, the NGOs, the MDBs, IRENA, the government. And so it's not a mindset of how do we further engage youth in the party processes or in the UNFCCC process. It's how do we engage youth everywhere, and how do we put every resource that we have towards decarbonization and towards a transition. And so, yeah, please update with the mindset. And I think it's important to kind of, no, I forgot my point.
Well, the one you made was great, so we'll go with that. Do you have another question?
Actually, I wanted to add to what Lucy was saying and maybe answer a question from another perspective. I think youth is already doing something right. I don't think we need a plan B, but what youth is doing right now, and I think what works the most, is actually to go into the organizations that have the most impact, start from scratch, grow in the organization, build a voice inside the organization so we can change things. I think this is what all of these people here are doing. I think we're all part of great organizations that can make change. One of my colleagues is Sarah. We're both in AquaPower. We have built 70 gigawatts of renewables so far in less than 20 years. This is tremendous. We're doing more. Sarah has been pushing, I have been pushing, other colleagues that are very young in the organization were pushed up in the organization because it's a well-built company. I think a lot of companies like this exist. We need to stop, in my opinion, wanting to do things individually all the time. We don't need 1,000 startups. We don't need 1,000 NGOs. We need people to collaborate together, build something bigger, and have impact on the world. And that's why I personally decided not to go and build my own thing, even if at some point I wanted to. Because I think that being with AquaPower as a big company and doing gigawatt scale projects and being able to talk directly to governments makes more sense than being alone and being advocating for something that thousands of others are advocating for. And each one of us is doing it individually. Now, one person from AquaPower, for example, can speak in the name of the whole company. And we are also backed by the government of KSA. So we're speaking on behalf of a very huge organization. And the right organizations actually allow you to, if you are the right person to speak up. So that's why I would just want to like share this message here. We need to be okay with the fact that we're not the CEO of the company. We need to be okay with the fact that maybe we'll make change that will not be visible, but that's fine, because it's not about glory, it's about pushing the transition. Even if you are in the shadows, even if you're doing things and they're not visible to everyone, as long as the organization is doing something good. So I think this is already being done. It's not because no one speaks individually about it means no one is doing anything. I'm fine to do it in the shadows. I think other people should be okay with just working with big organizations and not having their actual name on whatever achievement it is. So yeah, that's my 2 pieces.
Thank you for that. I think we have time for one more question/comment if anyone has one.
So the old guy in the room is going to speak now. I used to be where you are, and I'm sitting here trying to think, what would I say to myself 25 years ago? You're probably all under 30. Close. We're at COP 28. You know what the 28 is? It's 28 years. We have failed. That's the reality. We're not on 1.5. We're not getting there. It's not happening. And we failed because the system has failed. The clothes you're wearing, the phones that you use to do your social media, they were created by my generation and my parents' generation, and we failed. We cannot continue to do the same thing and expect different results. Einstein said that. So what we need from youth is a change of culture. You need to change the system. That's what we need to happen. We need to stop relying on the same way of doing things. Continuing to come to COP does not solve climate change. We need to change our energy systems. We need to change the way we travel, the way we eat, how we make things, and we need to recuperate our relationship with nature. We've lost it. So if I were to tell myself 30 years ago, what you should do is to change the system. That really is the challenge that we have, is to begin to reorder ourselves in society and have a different relationship with nature, because what we're doing is not working. So I challenge you so that in 30 years we don't have a COP60 and we're still talking about, and we won't be talking about 1.5, we'll be talking about 2.5. And a world at 2.5 is a very ugly world. So let's not get there.
Yeah, I would just like to respond to that, if you allow me. What you said is moving, and it's very right. COP28, such a shame, but what have failed is multilateralism, and it's a government, it's not youth. When I started my climate activism, my first COP was in Madrid, COP25, and I remember there was a very small population of youth, and all what we were seeking is just adding the word youth in a text. Today, when the high-level opening statements by head of states, almost every world leader said the word youth. If that's not an achievement, I don't know what an achievement is. And saying it, it means acknowledging the role of youth. And once you acknowledge, we started at least solving the problem. When I started, I saw friends walking in the corridors of the COP in Madrid. Today, they're part of the negotiating teams. They are making policies. They are creating change. System change starts, yes, outside the venues of COP, but coming to COP as well allows us to have this seat at the table with decision makers and hopefully be in their shoe one day, or at least be part of their team, and then pushing the youth agenda and pushing the change agenda. Change doesn't happen overnight, and it's individual actions, individual stories, individual achievements and successes that can create that system level change. So if anything, I feel proud that today in COP28 we have triple the amount of people. The awareness is there. And why the awareness is there? Is it because our head of state said so? No, because youth went on street and screamed and said this is a global crisis that we need to solve. So I give it to youth for bringing awareness about climate change and for making it a mainstream topic that we say it today on news. That is the start of change, in my opinion.
Very well put, as always, Sarah. So maybe on that, I'll ask one last question, and then we'll wrap it up. So going off of this conversation we just had, if you had to go back and give advice to your younger self when you were first starting out on this climate journey, one sentence only, all right? What would you say to this younger self that is just starting out, perhaps overwhelmed, perhaps a little hopeless, or maybe full of enthusiasm at the time and naivety? I don't know where we all were. But Nick, I'm going to start with you on that end. One piece of advice that you would give to your younger self.
Yeah, I think one advice I would give to myself, and I'm still trying to do that, is disconnect to connect. And so disconnect from technologies, disconnect from the busy, stressful environment, and just connect with nature. I think just adding on to your point is we're so heavily, this transition and being reliant on so many things today, and kind of looking forward is that we're not really in touch with nature anymore. And so those basic principles of harmony and balance and connection, we've lost that somewhere along the line. And so that's the advice I would give to myself.
Give to myself. I'm full of that. I guess one thing that I would give as advice to myself is to just keep going, and you know, people will follow when you believe in something hard enough, and also go with the mindset that is cooperative. We're not pointing fingers. We're not going to say that the older generation failed on us. We're ready to work with you. We're ready to learn from your mistakes, and then we're ready to start.
I think what I've realized 4 COPs later is I don't want to change the world. I want to start by changing myself and the people around me that I can impact. This is less daunting, less inducive of climate and anxiety. And yeah, I think, you know, having the intention of wanting to change just the people around you and the people that you can empower is more important than trying to solve the world problems.
Yeah, I fully agree with that. Like, I think, like, in all this journey, like, climate anxiety and also, like, oh, you're not with the gold standard of what people think a youth activist should be, which is, like, vegan, I don't know, like, super nature-friendly, that is, like, everything perfect. So I think we need imperfect activists that want change and that actually want to deliver results. So my advice for my younger self will be, like, own your story. So it's like, you can be imperfect, but in that imperfection, still, like, discover and help others. And I think that for me that's really important. Like, I also don't want to solve climate change like whole, because otherwise I will be drained and I will have mental health and won't have like any time for my family. So I think that is like in your space, in your right now like a story, in the moment you are, you need to own your story and say, I can do what I best can do, but actually support my community in a local-based approach, partner up, as Nico said, but also acknowledging who you are, because we cannot like start like, this is the expectation I have from like people or society has of you because you're a climate activist. So it's like, we cannot do that. We are not going to be perfect, and we are not trying to be perfect. We just want solutions, and we want to help from our own perspectives.
Amazing. And with that, I would like to thank our amazing panelists who have been perfect in more than one ways, even if they think they're not.
What would you leave for yourself?
I would say that it's actually not as daunting as it seems once you get into it. There are enough allies within your peers, with people that are younger than you, people that are youth allies in the older generation. Don't get overwhelmed so early. Just, you know, knack at it at like one step at a time on something that you're comfortable with and you're passionate about. And before you know it, you're a climate expert and sitting on a panel, you know? Anyway, thank you, everyone. Thank you to our panelists.